Hi everybody, my name is Leah and I'm a product manager here at Looker, which is Google Cloud's business intelligence tool. And today I'm going to be talking to you about data considerations for your startup, what you should be thinking about when it comes to setting up your data stack, and what questions you can ask to make better decisions for your company. So the first step in creating a modern data stack is really capturing that data. And that's going to be dependent on your business and where your data is coming from. This first box, I have a bunch of different applications that might be collecting data for my company. Now, this might mean information about customers coming from a CRM tool. It might mean events on my application or my website coming from something like Google Analytics. It might mean marketing information. So what campaigns did I run? Who clicked on them? What attribution do we have when it comes to sales? All coming from a marketing platform. Now, there are lots of other data sources besides these apps. Maybe you have some IoT data coming from sensors on hardware, like cars or factory information. Or maybe you have some data on forecasting or prediction results from machine learning algorithms that you're running inside of dedicated machine learning platforms. Or finally, I'm sure at some point in your company's history, you collected information from customers or potential customers to help get competitive insight or market share information. So this is data coming from surveys or forms. So from this picture, you can really get an idea that your company probably has data spread all over the place, being captured in different applications in different formats. So the first big step in creating this modern data stack is trying to process and centralize that data into a single location, whether that be a data lake or a data warehouse. And processing data can mean different things for different data. So for some data sources, it's as simple as just grabbing the raw data from that source and pushing it into your data warehouse. And for that, maybe you can use tools that just replicate your data or integrate your data from a UI perspective. But for other data sources, the data itself might not be captured in a way that's suitable for analytics or for you to create reports on top of. And for those data sources, we'll need to do some type of transformation. And that transformation can happen before it lands in your central location. So maybe before you're actually putting it into your data warehouse. And that's usually termed ETL, so extract from the source, transform, and then load it into your warehouse. Or now that data warehousing technology is getting so easy to use and inexpensive, you might also choose to replicate that data in its raw form and then transform it once it's actually loaded. So we call that ELT, extract, load, and then transform. And these are decisions that you'll have to make for your organization, depending on the types of skills that people have and the source of your data. So what that data looks like in its raw source. Okay, so at this point, we have our data centralized into our data warehouse, but a lot of people at your organization probably can't access that data, right? If we have this data centralized into a data warehouse, you're going to need to know how to write SQL queries to actually ask questions of the data. And probably a lot of key decision makers at your organization don't have the time or the skills to write those SQL queries. So this is where a business intelligence tool comes in. Now, I'm a little biased here because, like I said, I work for Looker, which is a business intelligence platform. But I think it's really important to choose a business intelligence tool that offers self-service capabilities. You know, as a startup, you're scrappy. Everyone is going to want access to data to make those decisions. So setting up a business intelligence platform that allows key decision makers to jump in, slice and dice data, ask questions, and create their own reports is going to be key to making sure people are staying agile in their decision making. So when it comes to this stage in the process, I really recommend having someone who's intimately familiar with the data, an analyst or a data practitioner, helping to create a few sample reports or data exploration environments for your team, and then training everyone else up on how to effectively use these environments and create their own reports So that in the future, they don't need to be waiting on a data analyst to get answers. So we really want to avoid creating this data bottleneck for the future. So the final piece, activate. And this is where we're actually infusing data into the workflows for our decision makers. We want to make sure that they're actually looking at the data before they're taking action or before they're making a decision. And what's really important about this stage is that as we're seeing these business intelligence and data platforms evolve, we see them have integrations with tools that your decision makers are already using. So this might mean maybe you set up an alert on your dashboard that sends a notification directly to Slack if something happens. Let's say you're the sales manager and a new opportunity has come in that looks really promising, and you want to get on the phone with that prospect right away. Well, you can set up an alert in your business intelligence tool so you get that Slack message exactly at the right point in time to go ahead and reach out to that potential customer. And beyond just alerts and messaging, we can also give people the opportunity to take action directly when they see data in their dashboard. Now, a great example that I like to use is you can have like an action or a button in your business intelligence tool that allows marketing managers at your organization to, click here and create a custom audience in your marketing platform to better target potential customers for your application or your platform, whatever your product is. So again, this is making sure that you're never missing a beat. And also, if we're delivering data to the places where our employees are already working, then it means they're more likely to be using data to make their decisions. So they're making really informed decisions. So now we've talked about all the different pieces of the data stack. You have an idea of what's included in each one of these, but you're probably wondering, how do you actually figure out, what to build first, what your architecture should look like, or maybe what tools you should be buying for your organization? So I want to talk about a few key questions to ask yourselves when making these decisions. The first one is, how is data going to drive decision making at your organization? And I say this one first because I often talk to customers or to companies that are really eager to get started with data. They want to centralize all their data right away. They have hundreds of reports they want to build. But all this stuff doesn't happen overnight. It does take some time to set up a complete data architecture. So you need to be prioritizing what you're going to build based on how it's actually going to influence decision making at your company. So ask yourself, if I have this data in my hand, what am I actually going to do with it? What decision am I going to make if this is higher or lower than I expect it to be? And if you don't have a good answer for that, it should be lower on your priority list to actually get set up. So the next question is, what are the skills of data practitioners at your organization? So I say this because there are tons of data tools out there. And as a startup, you're scrappy, you're agile, you only have a couple of people on your team. So you really need to take advantage of the skills that your employees already have. Let's consider, those tools that help us get data from the source into our data warehouse. Now, these tools range in technical ability. Some tools, like Fivetran, Stitch, it's just a UI where you point and click, you point your source, you point to your data warehouse, and it does all the work under the hood. So that's great for getting started. But other tools, might require knowledge of open source software or specialized programming languages. So tools like that, you really want to make sure you have someone at your company who knows how to work with them right away. So you don't have to spend time training someone up on some skill before they're able to use that tool that you just bought. And the last question I'll talk about is, what are the technological requirements for your business? So this might be things like data volume. If you're a company that has sensor data from IoT, you're probably getting huge amounts of data. So you'll be able to figure out what tools work best for those huge volumes versus what tools are better for smaller volumes of data. This also comes into play when we're talking about, real time. There's a lot of talk about real-time data, but real time can mean different things to different people. You might be making decisions in real time, but does that mean you can look at data that finished loading yesterday? Or does that mean you need to know data that happened, like 2 seconds ago? So you need to figure out what that threshold for what real time means to you, and also how pre aggregated the data can be to try to cut those volumes down where possible. So there's always going to be a trade off, and it really comes down to your business needs. So before we head out, I just want to leave you with like an anecdote of how I've seen some startups in my time at Looker set up their first data stack. So we already talked about how we have lots of different data sources. And I mentioned a little bit about how Fivetran or a tool like that, where it's a UI that you can point and click to centralize your data into a data warehouse, is a great way to get started with commonly used data sources like, Google Analytics, Google Sheets, your CRM tool, your marketing platform. And once that data is centralized into our data warehouse, again, we can sit a business intelligence platform on top of it. Now, since I work at Looker, I'll talk a little bit about Looker. Looker has this concept of a centralized data dictionary where you're defining all of your metrics in one place. And what's really nice about this is it's all code-based and it's Git controlled, which means that we're able to set up different templates to help you get started. So a lot of startups have the same data sources across the board with a couple of nuances depending on your organization, but with templates that help you get started actually creating those queries for your metrics or creating those first couple dashboards that are help your first decision makers get started with data. These templates will just accelerate your time to value. So you're spending less time setting up repetitive things and you're spending more time actually analyzing the data. And then finally, once you have these reports set up in your business intelligence tool, it's time to start integrating them into your business. So of course, we have our dashboards, maybe we have some basic alerts and schedules, but also integrating them into all of those applications that I mentioned before, whether it be actions to change the status in your CRM tool, whether it be notifications to reach out to a customer, or creating those audiences in your marketing campaign. And then finally, one thing that I also like to mention to startups is your data is valuable. And as you're thinking about how your company is going to expand, revenue and opening up new lines of revenue using your data should be at the forefront in your brain. So you can take your business intelligence platform and actually embed some reports for your customers to open up new streams of revenue for your business. So that's all I wanted to talk about today. I hope this was a good primer for some things that you should be considering when getting started with data at your company. And I hope to see you all around.